Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Gathering. I am David Ault.
And I am Jai Ram Lentine.
And we are still in Bhopal, India, after several weeks. And today we are fresh out of an 11-day...
No, I wouldn't say fresh. We're not so fresh.
We're not...
We're a little tired.
Inward we're fresh. Outward we are so tired. Of an 11-day Silent Vipassana Meditation retreat. Every morning, 4 a.m. Bong. So the pagoda, the reel that you just saw starting this is part of the grounds. Beautiful male separate, female separate. You don't see them except when you get into the main Dharma hall for much of the daytime meditations. And then the pagoda, the big beautiful pagoda that you see, is where they have individual cells where you are assigned a number, and then there are several of the meditations during the day that you go to the pagoda. And then as you progress with the technique during the week, some of those times you have the option to do it in the main Dharma hall with other people, or to go into the cell.
And let me ask you a question.
Okay.
So what was your main determining factor of whether you would go to a cell or stay in the Dharma hall?
I think it's because in the Dharma hall, the rules are so rigid. For example, there were many times that we were supposed to do non-movement meditations for up to an hour. So if your nose itched, if your leg was cramped, if your foot had fallen asleep, you were to apply the practice and do your utmost best to not move. And I think when the fatigue is so strong, but you're dedicated to the practice, there's a little bit of cheating that happens when you go, I think I'm going to go to my cell. And then early in the morning, sometimes I would go to the cell. And we both have admitted to each other that the teachings by an amazing teacher, his name was Goenka. He's a very, very influential teacher in India and particularly in Vipassana. But he has a style of Buddhist chanting that is like no other. And it goes on and on. And so in the 4 a.m., once you start, and you're getting close to 6 a.m., which is when you will break, you can tell that it's about 5:35 because the morning one is this mecca long Buddhist chant that goes on. And it's kind of painful. And so I just said to him, I would stand up in my cell and I would start to move, and I started doing push-ups and
I'm like, oops, me too. Yoga.
You were doing yoga.
It was my yoga time.
So anyway, here we
Cheating.
are. We're just.
But I would say
no one else listened to this because you're not allowed to do those things in Vipassana. So it was incredible. It really was incredible. It's hard to imagine something in present day that's that monastic in design unless you were a monk in a monastery. And even though 10 days relatively compared to everything else is not that long, it feels incredibly long. And 2 meals a day, just a little something to drink at 5 p.m. each night. And but there's a rhythm to it, and there's a science to it, because in order to do, how many hours did you calculate?
A full 10 each day.
A full 10 hours of meditation each day.
Give or not take. At least 10 hours.
Not under 10.
Not under 10. Because sometimes we might end a little earlier in the evening, but other times we did not.
And so, so the technique, what is it worth it? I'm gonna say absolutely. I mean, the technique is timeless and simple and powerful and difficult, because what it does is it shows you the enormity of the monkey mind. I'll give you my little version and you can give your version, but it's set up in a way that you learn that everything is sensation. So all sentient beings operate from sensation. And let's say it's a sensation that you don't like. Well, let's just say it's an itch. So you have the sensation of the itch. There's an automatic reaction to that sensation to scratch it. Advance that sensation to something that's painful. You develop these aversions, these reactions to that particular sensation, and so you react to it in wanting the sensation to stop. Opposite side of the coin, a sensation that is pleasing. And when something becomes pleasing, then that particular sensation sets up the cycle of craving, because now you want more things to match that particular sensation. So you have this pendulum of aversion, craving, that is opposed to being in equanimity and opposed to understanding that everything is impermanent. And I know that sounds really simplistic, but then think about the way in which you craft a life, the way in which you craft behavior, belief systems, themes. And so you build up these themes of living a life where you're building all of these systems because of things that you find as aversion, or you're building up all these things where you're grabbing from craving. And so primitively, the most primitive unconscious actions of us are aversion and craving. And to be conscious is to just simply notice the sensation and understand that everything is impermanent. And it's fascinating because, especially in the 1 hour where you're supposed to be still, my nose would itch or my eye would twitch, and I would immediately want to do that, and I would go, just observe, everything is impermanent. And sure enough, if you do the practice, the itch goes away on its own. The tingling sensation in the eye goes away. It didn't have as much success with the numbness in the legs and the sitting, but the principle is there. Yeah. So that's the kind of the nuts and bolts, the intellectual component of it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say?
I would say.
Okay.
I also just wanted to note the blazing heat, which is something that did not come through the video, but it was really hot.
Blazing heat. Yeah.
Blazing heat. So
it's a good adjective.
And the cells in the pagoda would get really toasty. And then the Dharma hall where the group sitting was fans, but so it was a little less toasty, but it was pretty much an oven.
So you have to sit with the heat and realize that too is impermanent. So you start this kind of development of everything is impermanent. But how does it start? The training starts with the
apana breath. So you're concentrating on a small part of your face, your nose, the air going in and out. First, you start with the whole kind of triangle around to the bottom of the upper lip, and then this points here. But then eventually you narrow it down to just this little sliver here in the nostrils, and you feel the breath. So that was 4 days.
4 days of just noticing the respiratory action that happens, the in-breath and the out-breath. And
you were allowed to wiggle more then.
So you were allowed to wiggle during the respiratory stuff.
So that was good.
But you notice that in focusing on just that small, tiny, significant area, I could still only manage just under a minute before the mind would just go off on some narrative. And before you know it,
time's gone by.
And then you hear the, return to the practice, return to the practice.
Yeah. So that was 4 days, and then you're initiated on the fourth day into Vipassana, which is more bodily sensation centered, and I had a really amazing experience during that, because so they had basically the whole teaching, all the teachings come from Goenka, a recording of him leading a Vipassana meditation at some time. I'm not sure when, maybe the 90s.
I think it was earlier than that.
Maybe the 80s, but it was recorded and it was nice. I mean, pretty nicely done. The sound sounded pretty good. So very rich sound. And so he's leading you through your first Vipassana practice. And it has to do with listening to, or not listening, but feeling sensations on different parts of your body. And he took us through, going these part by part. And then he started just saying, like from your feet to your head to your head to your feet, your feet to your head, your head to your feet. And I started doing that kind of in time with his voice. And then the next thing you know, I was sort of gone. And I was just, because my legs had become numb at that point. We weren't moving. And then they kind of merged together. And I felt like the wick of a candle. And then all of a sudden my whole body was just a light. And it was just vibration, which was really amazing. And then I kind of came back to myself, and that was the afternoon of day 4. Well, after that, I had tremendous pain in the one little part of my back, about that big, and then that shot through in these razor hot pokers of heat through my whole shoulder blade.
Very descriptive.
Oh my God, it was so painful. And so that was the rest of my retreat, was this incredible pain that maybe I would have a few minutes at the beginning where I wouldn't have that pain, and then about, at least, I don't know that I ever went more than 10 minutes, and then it was just searing pain, more or less for the remainder of the time. So and that was a lot to work with.
You went to the teacher a number of times to talk about the pain.
Did I tell you I asked for a chair?
No.
I asked for a chair. He said no.
You didn't tell me
I know.
that.
I kept forgetting to tell you
Wow.
that.
Oh my God.
We weren't allowed to talk. So
what was your summation with regards to that pain, that one significant thing?
Well, what we learned in days after that was that our bodily pain can be, or our challenges in the practice can be part of our samskaras. So samskaras are like our karma credits that we take with you, either build up in this life or from previous lives. So
it's like a repository of misfires, like all of the collective unconsciousness. And so, like in metaphysical speak, it would be the realm of the subjective mind, where all of the secondary causation or all of the unconscious actions, habitual cycles, just go on and on and on. And so that's called the samskara in the Buddhist teaching. And when we don't break out of that, then we just keep adding into that repository.
Right. So the teacher said that I was just working out samskaras from the past. And I thought, oh my God, I must have been a child murderer. But I ran through every sin I've committed in this life, I thought, and nothing I have done merits this punishment.
You said, I think I was an axe murderer, because it was like, and we're laughing now, and it's, oh my God. Well, and
part of the practice is maintaining your equanimity in the midst of your pain. So the idea would be, I'm having a lot of pain in my knee or whatever, and you don't react to it. You just remain centered, and that's a good practice.
And so Vipassana is basically the meditation technique of the Buddha, of Siddhartha, and this is what he stumbled upon as a child. When he would sit under a tree and meditate, he would just focus on the triangular area of the nose and just focus on the sensation of the breath. And as he became an adult, and then as he left the palace, so you know the story, and chose this ascetic life and did all of these things. That practice began to develop and to develop and to develop until the complete instruction that you're giving with the sensation and how you're supposed to channel that through your body became his dharma. I mean, that was his teaching, his gift. And the story is that around age 35, when he had finally made it to the Bodhi tree, he was sitting under a tree again, just like he sat under a tree as a child, determined to not move until he found the answer, or quote quote became enlightened. And doing that technique is when everything just, he became a fully perfected being. And it's beautiful actually to realize that there's a technique that one can use to empty out your samskara, to empty out the suffering, to end the cycles of repetition of craving and aversion, and become equanimous with the way in which we navigate through the human experience. And we teach all of that. We talk about that in so many different languages and so many different spiritual paths, but it's all intellect. And this technique is like this one way that you take it from the intellect and you practice it. And you go, well, that sounds really easy, until you actually sit
Sure.
and do it. And you do it in the way that it's designed to do it. And so that's why they put you in this monastic experience. No phones, no talking, limited food, long hours of meditation every single day, just constant.
Very short breaks.
Very short breaks, because what it does is you go through a detox. You go through the detox of the human world, and it isn't really until about day 4 that you're actually present enough to be able to move into the next thing. Would I encourage you to do it? Absolutely. If it scares the patootie out of you, that's a sign that there's something there that's calling you. And I think each of us should do the thing that we think that we cannot do, because there's very little I have found that the masses are willing to do with regards to technique, the actual practice of all of the intellectual stuff. And I will close with this. So Goenka he does these discourses at night, and he said something that was kind of just a throwaway, but it really caught me. And he was talking about when you're emptying the samskara, when you're emptying out and breaking the cycle of secondary causation, that the aim of that Buddha, the Buddha path encourages one to do, is to die happy. And to die happy actually would require that you have to live happy, that you're not afraid of the graduation, but that understanding that whatever degree of awareness, self-awareness and expansion that you achieve in this particular incarnation of innumerable incarnations, you take that level into the next journey. And so if you die suffering, you bring suffering into the next adventure. If you die happy, you bring that advancement into the next thing. It made a lot of sense to me, not from a fearful place, not from a grabbing place, not from a craving of anything, but just going, oh yeah. And it's like, that's the goal. My new goal is to die happy. And what's the requirement of that goal? That I practice living in the present moment equanimously, understanding that's impermanent. Oh, this thing that just happened is impermanent, and not letting anything stick that would cause me to swing from aversion to craving, aversion to craving. That's a full-time practice. That's a full-time practice. And I'm just so grateful that we wound up doing it here in Bhopal, because not only were we the only white-skinned people there, they treated us so kindly.
Oh, they were so kind.
They did everything that they could to make sure that we had enough mineral water. You know, water, not their tap water, but the water. So they, in the rules and non-intrusively, they made sure that everything from, you know, at least providing some things that weren't laden with super spice to making sure
coffee.
that they let him smuggle in little Starbucks packet. That was like
you had some too.
That was like the one thing in the morning is like, I have one instant little thing of Starbucks, and I just sip it slowly, trying to make it last. But they were kind. And when the noble silence ended yesterday, every Indian person on the facility, we were like fly paper, and they were flies. It's like, just belly, and know everything, and
big circles of people just
and there's just pictures. Like everybody got their phones back, and it was like going from complete silence to like, whoa! I think that's why we're really tired. But thank you for going on this journey with us.
Can I say one more thing? I just would say that despite the pain, I would do it all over again. It wasn't, I mean, it was fairly unbearable in certain moments, but it was wonderful.
I'm going to say it out. I will definitely do it again. There are 45-day Vipassana trainings. There are 30-day Vipassana trainings. It's highly encouraged that you do a 10-day at least once a year. And the reason being is I realize after was completed that it barely brushes the surface of how deeply habituated in the unconscious our whole genetic reactions and behavior and belief systems and domestication, all of that, it's so compatible with the teachings of the science of mind. And I kept having this thought that I wished that practitioners in the science of mind would, in their training, be required to do a Vipassana meditation 10-day silent retreat, because you do get in touch with how deeply embedded these themes are. I mean, what came up for me was I am a burden. It's almost like I came in with that theme from childhood. And I've known that, talked about that, taught that, intellectually. But the practice of having to face that theme was incredibly sobering and freeing. And I'd do it again. And they really set it up to encourage you to make this a lifestyle, to make this technique a practice. So I'm glad I got to do it with him, because we would do little sign language things, and then we were busted yesterday because all the guys in the male part were like, I saw you give him sign. And I was like, you did? Yes, we were watching you. We watched you constantly. We watched you walk. We watched you eat. And I was like, oh my God.
Oops.
So anyway, you never know when somebody's watching.
That's true.
Right? So that's it. I think we're going to go to bed.
Sleepy time.
Oh. All right.
Thank you.
Till next week. God bless.